And now something completely different.
Good afternoon. I'm speaking to you live just outside Los
Angeles. I like to think balding is just God's way of saying, now let's see you get laid.
Is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it?
What I'd really like to do is put the greatness of this man in perspective.
The hair loss community has a lot to be thankful for, having you as a spokesperson.
You mean you just call this guy up?
About life and about reality?
And now, America's #1 reality radio show for men. Live from Los Angeles, it's Spencer Kobren's The Bald Truth.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. 888-659-3727 is the toll-free number. Thanks for, of course, hanging in there, waiting for us to get the program on the air. Unfortunately, Joe Tillman will not be able to join us via video, but he will be calling into the broadcast. Let me give out the phone number again, 888-659-3727. Listen, guys, if you are new to the broadcast, don't know who I am or why I'm here, let me move my monitor out of the way. I am a consumer advocate for men and women dealing with hair loss. I am the author of The Bald Truth and The Truth About Women's Hair Loss. And I have been doing this broadcast for going on 20 years. Now, as difficult as that may be to believe, you know, hair loss is a silent epidemic that really affects the lives of the vast majority of people on the planet. Now, you'll see statistics out there like 50% of guys will be balding by age 50 and even lower stats or lower numbers than that. But the truth is, it's about 2/3 of men by the age of 35 who will suffer with some degree of appreciable hair loss, meaning their looks will change. They will look like they have less hair. There's a strong possibility that they will be looked at by the opposite sex or whoever they're interested in differently. There is a strong possibility that as their hairline erodes, so will their self-esteem. And 40% of hair loss sufferers are women. And, I always say it's a silent epidemic. I can't speak tonight. Silent epidemic of biblical proportions, because it is. It is a silent epidemic. When women say that they don't care if a guy is losing their hair, they may really believe that. It's really, in their soul, they believe, it's not about what's on top of a guy's head, it's what's in his head. As long as the guy is confident, as long as the guy is sexy, as long as the guy is attractive, they don't care if they have hair. But the truth of the matter is, it's not about the hair in their minds. It's about whether or not they are attracted to the person. And for many men and for many women, hair loss lowers their attractiveness status. That's just the way that it is. This may sound like a shallow situation, a shallow conversation, but it's not, because it really does run deep. Hair loss hurts. And that's why I've been able to do this broadcast for such a long time, because the vast majority of those who are dealing with hair loss, unfortunately, are less than happy with the situation. Yes, there are many people who will eventually come to terms with it. But for the young guys who are just starting to lose their hair, for the guys who and women who are going through the initial throes of hair loss, for those of you who may be, later in life dealing with hair loss for the first time, it is new, it is frightening, and it can be emotionally debilitating. And that's why we're here. I don't sell anything to the public. The only thing that's being sold are my books, and my publishers sell those. Nothing has been self-published. I'm not selling a product or a service to anybody. We provide you with the truth about everything and anything hair loss. And sadly, it's about a $4 billion a year business now. Most of what's going on out there that you see online is complete bullshit. When I was starting out, it was all about, seeing stuff in the back of men's magazines or in the back of the sports pages and in the local tabloids, seeing stuff on late night infomercials. Nothing has really changed except there's so much more bullshit out there than ever before. And now, sadly, what's happening is there are a lot of physicians who are latching on to some of the so-called the scientific BS, because there are some doctors who are doing certain newer types of procedures, non-surgical types of procedures like platelet-rich plasma therapy, or kind of just jumping on the bandwagon and saying that they are offering this new cutting-edge procedure that's helping, a lot of guys and women with hair loss. And while it may be, and I do know people in my personal life who have benefited from PRP, not all PRP is created equal. And the problem is everyone is jumping on the bandwagon, not knowing what the fuck they're doing. They are being sold PRP kits, centrifuges, just equipment to offer and training to offer patients this procedure that in some cases people are charging a lot of money for, upwards of $5,000. And the fact of the matter is the vast majority of men and women who are receiving PRP therapy for their hair loss by those who don't know exactly how to administer it, how to separate the blood properly, and what systems actually work well for hair loss, they're not getting results. And in my view, it's giving some really good science and some sound science a bad name. So I want you guys and ladies to be careful out there. There are doctors, and some of them are well known in the hair transplant field, who are claiming their own proprietary type of PRP, or that their PRP is growing hair faster than everyone else's PRP. I can tell you there's no scientific data showing it. There are a couple of guys who are doing studies. There's one guy down in Sarasota, Florida. He's a PhD by the name of Joe Greco. He is the godfather when it comes to PRP for hair loss. And this is a guy who has no ties to this broadcast. This is a guy who is not part of the IHRS because he is not a physician. This is a guy who does not pay a dime to support what we do here. But it's important that people understand that those who are offering this treatment, for the most part, in my view, are not doing it correctly. Now, there are some guys who are. Some of those guys are members of the IHRS. But there are those who are not, and that's just the way that it is. Hey, man, you're on the air. Who's this, and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Hayes from Michigan.
Hayes?
Yes.
Hayes, welcome, man. What can we do for you?
Hello, Hayes.
Hey. First of all, I enjoy your show very much, Joe, Spencer. It's a wealth of information. I've been in this game a long time. I'll give you my background, and I kind of have a specific question, probably for Joe and also for you, Spencer. But
sure.
I'm a 50-year-old male. Started off with 50 years old on the money.
All right.
So in your generation.
Welcome.
Yes, I'm watching the show, but I'm talking live on the phone. Yeah. Anyway, no delay.
Yeah.
Regardless, okay, so my family history, every single male in my extended family is a Norwood 6 or 7. So I'm fighting a losing game to begin with. So I know that.
You're genetically fucked is what you're saying.
I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Okay? But I've fought this thing my whole entire life. I had a recent surgery, but I'll give you a quick background if you have time.
Sure.
Started off with some mini grafts back in 90 and 91, believe it or not, at the age, I believe, of 23 with Dr. Matt Levitt. He did 100 and 120 mini grafts. Of course, it was a strip, thank goodness. It wasn't punch millimeters.
Right.
They were placed conservatively, which is good. Cost me a fortune back then. Of course, it was like, $30 a graft. Just crazy, stupid stuff. I was still in graduate school and so on and so forth. Started taking minoxidil in the early 90s and have worked my way steadily up. I know you're not a fan, Spencer, to 30% from an apothecary who does the minoxidil. So,
well, first of all, I want to make it clear. It's not that I'm not a fan, and I used minoxidil for a long time, and it really did bide me some time. I do think that for most people, it kind of acts as a Band-Aid. It's kind of a temporary fix. Doesn't work on the hormonal level. But there are people out there who have been on it for 20 years, and they believe they are having success with it. And you're right. There are guys who are going to compounding pharmacies or, like you said, an apothecary, which is just a old school term, or even a European term for a pharmacy, but who will compound, higher percentages of minoxidil, different dosages. So people are, they're like you. They're doing well, and they're on it for years. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear. It's not that I'm against minoxidil. I just kind of think that when you're starting to go through the balding process, now that we have finasteride, when we started, finasteride wasn't available. Well, actually, you're 50? Yeah. So it wasn't available.
A little more background. Yeah, sure. That's wonderful. Yeah, my apothecary confirms and verifies the potency and all that stuff. Murray Apothecary in Pennsylvania. Anyway, regardless, I started on finasteride in 96 or 97 and then worked my way into dutasteride in 01 and have been on that steadily since. I also got another 1,200 grafts from Dr. Pomerantz in Chicago in 94 and 95. And then I went to Dr. Feller in 04 for 2,200 grafts. And I just recently had a surgery of 5,000 FUT from an established surgeon. And this is the very first time, believe it or not, that I was able to get a strip right at the occipital hump. So it was meaty. I got a big head.
Now,
I got a lot of grafts.
Who is this surgeon?
That surgeon is Dr. You probably don't know him, and I was Dr. Dr. Sunit Sonai in India. He's a well-established.
Actually, I don't know him, but I have read about him.
Yeah, he's really good. He works with primarily Indians, but he does some American people. He's published. He's done, well over, I think at this point, probably 3,000 surgeries. So
let me ask you this. How long ago did you have surgery with him?
It was an all-day affair, my man. I started it around.
But how long ago?
I'm at exactly the 6-month mark, and this is what kind of prompted me to call today because I have a couple questions about a person with a mature scalp who's had extensive surgery, who is, fighting the good fight, and realizes, much like probably Joe Tillman, that it takes multiple procedures for a Caucasian with fine, thin hair thickness and that to continue. This is probably my last FUT surgery, but I have good laxity. I might get some more.
Well, before I bring it over to Joe, I just have one question. So far, who do you think you had the best surgery from?
Dr. Alan Feller was good. At the time, I was 37. He filled in the hairline like I wanted it to be done. The surgery was done extremely competently, nice tight packing. At the time I had more hair, believe it or not, for some of these young guys on the forums who think finasteride is going to work forever, everybody's a certain individual. After 20 years, hey, if you're fighting the real genetics, you will go back to somewhat of a baseline. I think Joe will probably agree with me on this, and you might as well. Some of us are better responders over time. Some aren't. I had a lot more native hair at that time. My terminal hair in the mid-crown, mid-vertex, even toward the frontal was more established back then when I was 37, and I had a wonderful result. 6 months later after that surgery, I was doing the spike hairdo, and it was rock and roll, for a good amount of time, dyeing my hair black, having a great time, It was beautiful. And then around 2011, which is approximately 6-7 years later, I noticed that I was thinning again. I couldn't keep the native hair, even with the higher concentrations of minoxidil, the dutasteride. I've even gone with Laser Messiah. I know Joe did a recent video on hair lasers. I don't really believe in the diodes that don't have a lot. I have a laser helmet that I've been using now for about 4 months that has over 400 diodes. And I use it faithfully about 4 to 5 times a week for 20 minutes a week. Listen, I don't know if it's going to regrow any hair, but I know that anything that can keep your hair healthy can cosmetically assist giving you the illusion of more hair.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what, you are You are hardcore. Why is this happening? You are hardcore,
Why is this
man.
happening?
I'm talking about. I'm looking at my camera. You are hardcore, man, and I definitely appreciate guys like you who have fought the good fight for a very long time. And I understand just the frustration, the fact that you've had to go through multiple surgeries. I think your story is a very important story for the young guys out there who believe that they're going to go in there and get 1 or 2 surgeries, and their life is going to be. That's it. They're going to be smooth sailing for the rest of their lives. And that is usually not the case. And that's one reason why hair transplantation, as far as every cosmetic surgery that is available today, is one of the most, I would say, overall flawed surgeries. Not technically flawed if it's done correctly, but just the fact that hair loss is a progressive disease. There's only a certain supply to meet the demand. And that's why you have to do, if you're planning on having surgery, everything that you've done in order to maintain as much hair as possible, of native hair as possible, for a long period of time, to maintain that investment and to also maintain the look that you want for as long as you want. A lot of guys aren't willing to do that. So you're at a point now where you're thinning again. You just had a surgery 6 months ago. And at the 6-month mark, you obviously have a question. So what is that question? Sure.
You made a really good point. People at 50, you're still going to care about your appearance. I'm a successful business person, and I'm doing this solely for myself. I have a rich social life. It's not like I'm doing this for anyone else. My question is this. Someone who's had multiple surgeries, who has coverage, I'd say I had 30% coverage all over my entire scalp from the crown all the way to the front when I had this most recent FUT surgery. I know that my surgeon is experienced enough not to transect, as he did he didn't do the lateral slits, Joe. He did sagittal, which, there are established surgeons in America that do sagittal as well. I think.
Let me just say this.
Sure.
Let me just say this before you continue. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
First off, you don't need to apologize about the lateral slit, because lateral slit, it's simply a tool that some clinics use, or not a tool, but it's just a method. And I was actually talking to someone about this recently who was asking me, well, should I consider this surgeon because, even though they're not doing lateral slit? And the reason I realized that, I'm getting this question because my longtime former affiliation with Hassan Wong, and I just need to make it official.
Also, your dogged promotion of lateral slit as if everything else sucked. That's why.
Yeah, everything else sucked. No. Yeah. No, look, even for many years before I even left the clinic, I recognize that other clinics are world-class and they're not using lateral slits. The problem is that a lot of clinics are saying that they're using lateral slits when they're not using lateral slits, because lateral slits, by definition, are custom-cut blades with incisions made to match angle and direction, but they're made in a coronal fashion or perpendicular to the direction of growth. That is the official definition of what lateral slits are. But a lot of clinics, I can't say a lot, but some clinics are saying we're doing lateral slits when all they're doing is they're taking their syringe and they're orientating the incision
laterally, not necessarily in a perpendicular fashion.
On the coronal plane. Yeah, exactly. And I think that some are doing it, they're calling it that by mistake, but others are doing it because they are trying to latch on to that type of positive appearance. But back to the caller, don't worry about that, because lateral slit ain't all that and the chips like I used to scream that it was. It's great for some cases, but if you don't know what you're doing with it, it can actually be detrimental. You can actually cause more vascular compromise.
And there's more peripheral damage when you're going laterally as well if you don't know what you're doing.
If you don't know what you're doing. So so you said that and it just kind of triggered something. I just want to get that out there. But please continue.
I'm glad you said that, because I really think it's in the hands of a skilled surgeon who knows how to go in between the hairs, obviously, who does this day in and day out, is board certified, all these things, and knows exactly what he wants to accomplish and how he needs to get there. My question to you, Joe, is because you've seen so many guys in your experience on a day-to-day basis that would probably fit my characteristics. Still had about 30 to 40% coverage, around 50 years old, and now did what many would classify as a mega session. I'm at 6 months. We rebuilt a little bit of the temporal points like you had done, and we worked from mainly, obviously, from the very front into the mid-vertex. We even did a little bit of the crown work with some of the leftover because I was thinning there, but I don't have technically a bald spot. I'm at 6 months. I cut my hair really short right now, so it's not like I've been growing it out. I've just kind of like told myself because this is like I'm older, I already had coverage. I'm starting to, continue to lose my hair. I thought maybe I'd give it a full year, even maybe 18 months. My question to you is that based upon these characteristics and my history in that, would you necessarily expect a session like this that's been done properly, let's assume that, of course, that it would take longer for the full results to come in from someone who's in 30 or 35? You know how our bodies, when we're younger, everything recovers quicker? Hair transplants with someone who already has coverage, would that take longer in your estimation? Keep in mind, I have fine, thin hair, so I'm not expecting, these wow results with guys with huge, thick microns and densities. And, my average follicular unit is a little over 2. So, that's really where I'm at. I'm just curious because
this is a great question. This is a fantastic question. The answer is no. It doesn't. Okay. Your age, I don't feel like your age has anything to do with it. I've seen, I don't care if it's your first one or your 10th one, age does not, in my opinion, the way I see it, affect the timeline of what you can expect for your recovery. What does affect the timeline, in some cases, is just your general health, your general well-being. What do you eat?
I'm going to interject here also. I also believe, depending on the amount of grafts that you've already had placed, there is peripheral fibrotic tissue or microscopic scarring where new grafts may be placed in between existing grafts. If you had enough grafts placed over the years, it's possible that you are implanting grafts, or the doctor's implanting grafts, even if he's doing it perfectly without transecting the native hair or the transplanted hair. If it's in a transplanted zone, it is possible that growth can be compromised. And Joe, I don't know if you agree with me, but that's, it's pretty common, and it does happen. And I've heard a lot of doctors talk about that.
I think that when you're dealing with fibrotic tissue where you're making the incisions, I think that the damage that you're referring to comes from more of a lack of experience. And what I mean by that is if you have, like in my case, okay, so the top of my scalp, I've got lots and lots of, micro scarring all over the top because I've had so many incisions placed in my scalp. I have had zero slowdowns for my recovery.
But you have a huge head. So.
I do have a big head. Yeah. Just a large head. No, but in fact, in my first procedure with Dr. Wong, did not grow in as fast as my second or my third. I remember very, very clearly that I was getting early growth in the hairline as soon as I believe I want to say between 3 to 5 weeks. I was getting sprouting in my second procedure, where it took. I have to look back at my timeline. It's been so long, but I think it was like 5 weeks versus 4 weeks, or even 3 weeks. But back to the issue of scarring, I think that if you have a lot of scarring, micro scarring from multiple procedures over the years, I don't think that it inhibits the growth in the least. I think that if the doctor approaches it as if it's not full of microscarring, as if it is native or untouched tissue, then that might cause an issue because you do have a slightly reduced vascularity because of the scarring.
Right.
But I've seen so many cases where patients have had a helmet of scar tissue.
Yeah, and hair grows, sure.
I'm talking like a 3,500 graft session.
Right.
And it actually grew like crazy. I mean, even early growth compared to the average patient. And it was really shocking. And I've seen it multiple times where a patient had really thick scar tissue, from oil burns from, as a child. I mean, really, really hardcore stuff. And even that didn't impede the growth. So I think it's just a matter of, are you carpet bombing the tissue with a giant needle, or are you taking care to make small incisions and, not place them too close together and, monitoring the density as you go in? I think that's probably the biggest thing that affects the overall growth and the rate of growth.
Now, let me ask the caller. I mean, you chose to go to India. Obviously, you did your research, and because of the price at this point.
Primarily, and but also I wanted an experienced surgeon. I would put his work up against any FUT doctor in America from what I saw when I was there. My work was done extremely clean. To be fair, also all the areas that I didn't have any hair, he brought my hairline down, especially into the front, like a V almost, and in the temple points, that's all come in. Like I said, I'm keeping my hair very short, so perhaps I have a little bit of I'm trying to remember back from my last transplant, which was so long ago, how everything was done, and I was dyeing my hair and stuff. I mean, I guess, obviously at 6 months, depending on, if you're normal and in decent health, I'd say I'm average health. You're, Joe, what, 50% growth, 40, 50% growth, depending, probably?
I don't quite... Oh, it's 6 months. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard. I don't like giving percentages.
Hard to say, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think that I think that you should have a very strong indicator of what the final result will be by 6 months. But I've seen like my own. I remember this like it was yesterday. My second procedure, I was shitting the bed at 5 months. I was like, what the hell's going on? And I'll never forget this. And of course, Mike Furco, the consultant, never lets me forget it. He was just laughing at me. He's like, "You're Joe Tronick. What the hell are you doing being upset or worried?" I'm like, okay, all right. So 7 months, it was like a switch was turned on. And
the funny thing is,
I just woke up and it was fuller. I just had this volume that I didn't have or seemed to have the day before. I mean, obviously that's not the case, but that's how you notice. It's just like, bam, one day, wow, oh man, okay, it is thicker, and you just notice it. So, yeah, it's hard to quantify, but I think at 6 months, I don't think that you should really look at it and say one way or the other. Is this it, or that is it? Or whatever. Just say, okay, I'm at 6 months. I got more development to come.
Exactly. To be fair, also. Yeah. Again, I actually keep my hair very, very short. I mean, like, it's not a fair indicator of I should start growing it out. I keep it. I shave it every 3 weeks. So you're like, well, why the hell are you shaving your hair when you had a hair transplant? I don't. Why does someone try to keep their hair throughout their entire life and have plastic surgery? It's some of these things are a little bit, here nor there.
Well, how low do you shave your head to? Like a number 2, number 3? And how does the scarring look?
Well, I mean, you know what? This scar, Dr. Alan Feller's scar, really good. Right. Obviously, he's skilled. He knows what he's doing. This one is fantastic. I mean, he really closed it super tight, trichophytic. I could feel when he was closing it, how tight and how deep and just how careful he was with closing this. And I mean, on the sides he went a little bit forward of the ear. Okay, obviously, if you're going to do nearly 5,000 FUTs, you're going to go a little bit, forward of the ears.
Right.
You can't really even see that scar anymore, and in the back, it's
pretty amazing.
Healed wonderfully.
You should have this guy. You should tell this guy to apply the IHRS because he sounds great.
He is good. I mean, he's on a few other forums. He primarily deals with Indian hair, and Indian gentlemen have finer hair.
Right.
They have less density. So when he gets an American guy, but I kind of have like wimpy American hair. It's unfortunate. I have Caucasian wimpy hair. I'd say my hair is probably finer than Joe's, and it's certainly finer than yours. Density's lower too. So I don't expect. Listen, as I get older. Who knows,
Let me tell you something. You have no idea what my hair is like. This is an entire sham.
I know. You say all that. But listen, you're always going to care about your hair, and I want coverage. And, when I grow it out again, I expect good results. I wanted to call in tonight because I thought, some people that might listen might hear from a real veteran, a real warrior. I knew when I was 19 what was ahead of me. For some reason, I knew it. I knew I was going to do whatever I could.
What's interesting, though? There are guys your age, there are guys our age who, while, you worked with what was available. You had, even though it was very expensive, you had a relatively small case initially with Matt Levitt. Mini and micros. It was a strip, or maybe they were just mini grafts. I don't know how big the grafts were.
They were strips.
Yeah.
They were strips.
But I don't know how big the grafts were. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Probably like 4 to 6 hairs. They're put behind the hairline. I had a Dr. Pomerantz took out a row too. Okay. So yeah, they're behind my hairline now.
So essentially, so the first procedure, while you had a lot of hair, you probably saw some more density, and then when you had to go in for another one, they realized, hey, wait a second, this isn't so great. And then Pomerantz at the time, he's dead now.
Right.
Yeah. He was pretty old school, and so I don't know what the work was like for you, your experience with Pomerantz, but it was probably, I'm assuming that it was probably not close to what you had with Feller.
No, it was 94 and 96, and those were micros and minis, and he put those in front of the larger grafts. And, back then I had so much more hair, obviously. I used a little bit of Kobren and or Dermatch, a little Pro-Thick. I was an artist with my hair, and I had a full head of hair. Yeah. And it was great, and I worked my way through it, and when I went to Dr. Feller in 2004, I was ready for to have my hairline refined. That's exactly what he did.
What I'm saying is, you are, in the same generation, and there are guys who are online who are in our generation who made you made very conservative moves. And I appreciate that. And also, you went on medication as early as you could. You understood the importance of early intervention. You weren't afraid to take finasteride and then dutasteride. You did everything the right way. And even though you did everything the right way, this is an example of you're still dealing with it at the age of 50. And that's why, again, and you said it, it's so important to have a veteran like yourself. Now, there's a lot of veterans online, and there's a few that are very active online who made a lot of really bad moves. They went in for flap surgeries. They went in for multiple scalp reductions. They went in for like brandy, hair lifts or scalp lifts and things that are a lot more invasive. And they were sold procedures that, I think there's a subset of guys like yourself and even like me who had the wherewithal to kind of look at things and say, you know what, I'm going to be more conservative and I'm going to go for what I think might really benefit me. Where other guys kind of just walk through the doctor's door, they see the guy in a white coat and they're just like, do whatever you want. So my point is you're an experienced guy who made all the right moves, but you're still dealing with this. So young guys out there, they need to know that even in 2017, with the technology as it is today, if you have a strong predisposition for male pattern baldness, if many people in your family are Norwood 6s and Norwood 7s, you're going to be in for a fight. And you have to decide whether or not you want to start that fight. Because once you're in and once you're cut, you're cut. And that was kind of a long way to get to my point. But I think you guys know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. I mean, Joe is a prime example of someone who worked his way back to a really nice appearance from, we've all seen his pictures from the very beginning. He was Norwood 6, and he went to the right doctors, had a plan, took him several years, and damned if he doesn't look great. I mean, the guy doesn't even wear concealer, and I love the way he does his frontal hair and all that stuff. I mean, I have good coverage too. I'll probably let the crown go if I do another strip and maybe some more FUE, but Joe's got a lot more grafts than I do at this point. But I'm not against having more surgery, but I know exactly what I'm against because this is a progressive disease. I'm fighting it the entire way. I'm the only one in my family with hair.
Right. Good for you.
It's a decision that I had to plan for over the years. And I just, on the forums, you see a lot of these guys, I hope that they have a good surgeon that's going to frame their face, because if they're going to lose it all, the crown is gone. I mean, not everyone has 12,000 grafts. And when you're talking about FUE, I mean, most guys are lucky to have 7,000 or 8,000.
Right.
And listen, this is a numbers game, right? Terminal hair goes bye-bye. And at a certain point, listen, there's so much coverage on your scalp and so many hairs to replace it. You've got the shingling effect and the way you comb it and style it and so on and so forth. It's an illusion.
Well, and that's the thing. It is an illusion. I think it's really important that people are prepared, especially guys who have a strong genetic, predisposition to, really progressing in their hair loss pattern, that they understand that if they want to live their life with a completely full-looking head of hair, it is all about planning. And you're going to have to eventually realize that, I have to let this crown go. I'm going to do as much as I can in the front, temporal peaks, frame my face, do whatever I can, use those grafts wisely. And then they could always fit something in the back if they wanted to wear a prosthetic in the back. And they might be able to live their entire lives looking as though they have a full head of hair. But in the end, it is, like you said you're an artiste. You have to be an artist. You have to really understand what your limitations are and know that, just having your hairline lowered a couple of inches to where you were when you were 22 years old is probably not the best idea for most guys, because in the end, you will not have a supply to meet the demand. And that is something that too many young guys just don't get.
And I would like to just kind of clarify one thing that you said, that, and thank you for the comments about, my hair, my appearance. I do appreciate that. But I got to be completely clear on this. There was zero planning involved with this. When I had my first repair surgery, keep in mind, same timeline as you, 1992, 93, I had 2 surgeries. Then I lost everything on top. So, through most of my 20s, I was not just bald, but I had the pluggy mini grafts at a 90-degree angle sticking straight above my forehead. So my first surgery was not part of any grand strategy. My first surgery was something that I had to literally refinance my car for so I could pay for it.
Yeah, but that's the point. Your experience. Go ahead.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
And when I had the first surgery, I had zero ambitions for more work. None. I was just happy to look like a normal guy, to not have this constant, gazing up at my hairline when I'm trying to talk to someone face to face. That was my goal, and that's what I accomplished. It wasn't until I became such a hair geek and really into it, and Joe Tronic on the forums, all this. That's when I started to kind of play with the idea. But there was no, so the first point is there was no grand plan. I want that to be clear. It was just the way things worked out. But the second thing that people don't really think about is I never had a mega session. I never had one of these big 4,000 graft procedures that, I was known for, that the clinic was known for. The biggest session I ever had was not even 2,500 grafts.
You're right. You chipped away at it. Yeah,
well,
right.
but here's the thing. I think what the caller is stating is that, at least from what I got out of it, was you may not have had a grand plan, Joe, but the fact that you documented your journey, you basically laid out a plan for everybody else who would take the time to really do their research, who weren't just jumping in feet first, who took a look at you and said, shit, this guy was fucked up at one point, and look where he is now. And I want to be prepared for that. So just documenting your journey essentially set a blueprint for so many people out there. And, you know, what the caller is stating, that's why it's so important that he is a veteran. His journey, while he may not have had the grand plan when he first started, you know, he learned along the way. And he was really able to create a really smart game plan. A lot of guys will still, it doesn't matter what we do, it doesn't matter what they see online, they will go to the wrong forum, or they will go to some, you know, cosmetic tourism place, or they would go to some guy, some plastic surgeon that bought a neograft, and they will not be told what they need to be told. They will not take the time to get educated until they made a few mistakes. So, yeah, I don't think anybody, maybe, you know, call or correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think anyone thinks that Joe had a grand plan. Because if you did, you wouldn't have been fucked up to that the way that you were at first.
Well, I mean, in my humble opinion, Joe is a groundbreaking presence in this field, regardless of how people want to frame it, okay?
Why do you think I have him on the show?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, there's absolutely no doubt. I mean, who else would, from that starting point, worked his way into, you know what I'm trying to say here.
Absolutely.
And then he got to where, you know, listen, the guy just looks normal. Sure, he's got, you know, and even in his crown, he's strategically placed grafts so he has like a base point, you know, like I don't know how to say it, but you know what I'm saying, where, you know, it's an anchor. So he's not slick bald in his.
That's right.
When he had a slick crown bald spot, and you know what, now he's got a little bit of thinning, and you know, Joe could do concealers and all that good stuff, but I don't think he does it in real life. I know he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
Sure
he doesn't.
No.
And you know, I'm you know, a fan of concealers. I talk about it all the time.
I am too.
And that's just the way it is. That's the way I choose to live my life. Joe is, I guess, maybe better equipped than I am, because he at one point had to live his life with these, you know, plugs, these mini micrographs, you know, walking around with this picket fence hairline. So I think having a little bit of a thinning crown is nothing to him.
It isn't. It's, I mean, would I like it to be fuller? Sure. But,
right.
And I will admit, I have been playing around a little bit more with the Kobren supply that I had in my video.
I see. There you go. Once you get,
Joe, you know, Joe, I know you did the reviews on concealers. You know, the Pro Thick is pretty good. You know, the spray. I know spray. Most people don't like it, but if you're really good with it, and you know, if you have some finesse, boy, that spray can really. It's less time consuming, and then you comb it through. Yeah. Anyway,
I think what happened. I think Ron Popeil kind of ruined it for everybody. I think if it was,
you know, he did.
If it was originally marketed as some sort of like, you know, tinted hairspray, or you know, something that, you know, as a concealer, as opposed to, you know, hair in a can.
Good looking hair.
Yeah, but the way that I believe it was marketed, even though he had tremendous success with it, I don't think it would have had the same stigma, because you do see similar products in the store that is it's geared towards women for their roots and also for the thinning spots in the part line, and it is marketed in a completely palatable way where there's no stigma. So I think those products are really good. The only problem is they can leave a real mess in the bathroom. You have to know how to finesse them. You have to know. You basically have to get like one of those spray tanning booths in your house in order to use some of this stuff.
Here's a funny story. Back in 98 and 99, after I'd had about approximately 1,500 grafts and that, I used, less is more, by the way, you have to be subtle. I used some of the spray and, you know, combed it through, looked great, full head of hair. And my girlfriend at the time, she'd be like, you know, you should move in with me, but, you know, every week I got to wash these pillowcases. I'm like, hey, what am I going to do?
Dude, that's a great story. I mean, at least she was kind about it. I actually at one point I was using Topic, and it's not. I think all these fibers are good. And I went to the dentist. I'm in the dentist chair for a while, and I get up, and the bolster has. I mean, literally, I'm not even joking. It looked like a smiley face of hair fibers. on the bolster. And I just kind of brush it away and laugh, because that's what I talk about, and this is what I do for a living. But so many people are mortified by that concept. And and you listen to the program, when I speak about the fact that I paint my bald spot, when I don't actually paint it, but I wear makeup back there, initially women look at you like there's something, like they don't even understand it. They're mortified by it until you make the analogy like your entire face is painted. You don't leave the house unless you're wearing a complete disguise. And I can paint my bald spot a little bit. And then they start to kind of understand it after a while.
Yeah, then they're like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, as a lifelong bachelor who doesn't plan on getting married or have children, when I meet an attractive woman who has some moxie and is self-assured, I throw it right back at her. If she brings up my hair, which looks good always,
right?
Obviously, because of all the work I put in, I'm like, yeah, I'm totally honest with her. I'm like, yeah, it's important to me. It looks great. No one can tell. There it is, and boom, it's never discussed again.
Then I believe you. It sounds like you really have a good life. You're dealing with something that so many guys have dealt with. You're dealing with it well. You're still dealing with it in a way that I think is just very healthy. And you want to keep your hair.
My younger brother is 18 months younger than me. Has been losing his hair his entire life. Never once thought about a transplant. 6'4", great genetics, great family, all this stuff. It hasn't affected him one bit. And I've always told every guy that's always looked at my hair and said, wow, you still have your hair. I thought you were going to lose it all. I was like, I don't recommend a hair transplant. I don't recommend it.
It's a hard road.
Especially for men. Yeah, as they get older, because most men are going to be able to grow into their appearance because, honestly, after 40, 45, 50, 55, we've all had our youth. We can't really, we can still do everything we want to do, just a little slower, more recovery time. However, that's not what society values as we age, and I think our brain adapts to that. And I've always told all my friends, don't bother. And every I work primarily with older Jewish men in the financial field, obviously, attorneys and stuff.
Right.
And they're all, almost all of them are losing their hair, and they're always like, never even thought about it.
Yeah, dude, I'm like the only one left. I'm the only one in Shul who has hair in his head.
Well, they're from Israel and other countries, and a little bit different than America. The European mindset. Joe would know this. Joe's been to Europe many times. You probably have too. Yeah. Listen, it's not everything. It's not everything that makes the man. Hair doesn't make the man in Europe,
right,
and other countries,
and again,
to a large degree.
That's a really strong message. Your guys had multiple surgeries. You just had one 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. You've been fighting this battle your entire life, and you would still tell somebody, if possible, avoid it.
Always.
However, you remind me of myself. We were both not equipped to deal with hair loss, especially in our younger years.
You're right.
And
you're right.
I'm still not.
Mm-hmm.
I
had undergraduate. I had undergraduate friends, and they were. I called it radical balding because it was radical balding when you're 20, 21, 22, and then in graduate school, and when I got my PhD. More radical balding, and I didn't want to be radically balding. I thought it was odd. It looked peculiar to me, and it wasn't who I thought I was when I looked in the mirror. And that's why I started doing things when I was 23, because I realized that, like you said, I probably didn't have the mental gymnastics to necessarily deal with it competently or even confidently as I aged, and the technology I thought was at a certain level where I could start to, retard the balding process ever so slowly and fight it.
Well, and I'm willing to be completely honest, and I am all the time, that I am 52 years old, and if things continue to progress, and right now I've been very, very, very lucky, and I think that it's a combination of genetics and medication, obviously. I'll do whatever it takes to try to maintain the current look that I have for as long as I can. And I'm not ashamed.
Your style works for you.
Well,
it does.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
But I'm not ashamed to say it. It's not out of vanity. It's just out of this is how I feel comfortable. I'm currently comfortable in my own skin for the most part. If I can maintain that comfort level, it doesn't matter how old I am. If I'm 60 years old, I still want to try to be in my mind, as comfortable in my own skin as I can be. And there are plenty of people out there, like you said, who will just say, let it go. It's a joke. What's the big deal? You grow into yourself. And people do. But it's possibly because I've been able to maintain so much over the years that it would almost be as though I'm being reshocked. It's going through the initial throes again if things start to go by the wayside. So I'm not ready for it.
For me, I was the complete opposite of both of you guys, because when I first had my transplants, I wasn't even, it's like it was my hair loss was bothering me, but it wasn't even on my radar until my best friend called me up and said, hey, come with me to this consultation. And that was the beginning of the end.
Oh,
right?
wow.
I mean, I walked in, I'm just there for moral support. And the doctor looks at me after he's talking to my buddy, and he goes, and we can help you too. I'm like, the fuck? What do you mean? He goes, well, you're losing your hair. I'm like, no, I'm not. He goes, yes, you are. Maybe I am. Okay, all right. And I knew I was, but he was this older doctor, probably, I don't know, maybe in his 60s at that time. I mean, he was, this grandfatherly type of figure for me, really
authority
20s.
figure.
White coat, the pictures of celebrities on the wall, and, we were in Knoxville, Tennessee, of all places. It's like, come on. And it was literally, when you say a mom and pop operation, his wife was the head nurse and his daughter was the assistant nurse.
Dude, I had Norman Orenreich himself in his white coat, in his Park Avenue office, tell me at around that age that if you were my own son, I would tell you to try a few. And if you don't like them, you don't have to come back. And for whatever reason, and I was losing my hair, but there wasn't even enough skin showing where you can even put any grafts, in my view. I would have these 2 horns of 4mm plugs if I decided to have it done. But even with that type of pressure, even with the fact that he said that I was going to lose my hair, for whatever reason, I just had the wherewithal to step back and say, there's something wrong here. Something just didn't smell right. So
and I think that's why you were, probably a bit more aware of what's going on, because you had been thinking about it earlier. You did have this mindset. I didn't.
Right.
I didn't even, I wasn't even on the same planet as that. He's in the white coat. I mean, he's a doctor. We're trained from birth to trust the guy in the white coat. So I didn't even give it a second thought.
See, I'm a Jew, man. I don't trust anybody. So
and you're from New York.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It didn't work out.
I've said that I don't recommend transplants for people, but here's the thing. I have to amend that statement. I do recommend someone get consultations once they're older, their hair loss is stabilized. They know their balding pattern. It's a paradox. I know it's ironic, but the guys in their early 20s, it's almost like you should just allow it. Just focus on other things. And lots of guys are shaving their heads now. They weren't shaving their heads back when Joe and you and I were younger.
No,
it wasn't a thing.
Exactly.
Now,
if they were considered to be skinheads, and they were.
Well, it wasn't the gay community. But
in the gay community, and you either had to be gay, Yul Brynner, or Kojak. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. But now, if someone was like 35, and you could see that their hair loss pattern is stabilized, and they had decently thick hair, good density, which a competent doctor will do. He'll do the hair analysis. He'll look at the family history. You've got more time on your side, and maybe you can do some medications to stabilize everything. Then I would say, listen, if you want to frame your face and be realistic and absolutely look at other patients with your hair characteristics, your age, your balding pattern, and look at the amount of grafts that it takes, maybe 2 surgeries, maybe even 3, which is, I know, a lot for many people. 2 is probably the max that most guys are comfortable with, and some of these guys think 1 and done. But if it's a progressive thing, hey, listen, it ain't. You're going to get a dusting, if you will. But I would say, frankly, for older people that are stable, that are financially able and reasonable, and want to do it for themselves, not for any other reason, then I would, go to a good doctor, do your research properly, and we've seen many examples on the forums of people that do an informed consent and have wonderful results. And, for many, many years, they're very, very happy.
Absolutely. And both Joe and I are fans of surgical hair restoration. I make part of my living from doctors who are part of my organization. But, your message is very powerful. And I wish that the marketers out there, the real marketers, not some of the guys who are claiming that people like Joe are marketers or me or other people are marketers. I'm talking about the real marketers out there who are out there saying, we have this new technology is available now. You want your hair back. What are you waiting for? It's so as though it's like a trip to the dentist's office. It's so just they make it like as though it's such an innocuous experience as opposed to the real surgical experience that it is, and also the fact that it is probably one of the most labor-intensive, difficult to pull off, and again, it's a type of cosmetic surgery that is not like having a rhinoplasty or a breast augmentation. If you have a good rhinoplasty the first time, there's a very good chance you're never going to need any other nose surgery. However, if you have a great hair transplant the first time, there's almost 100% chance that you're going to need a second surgery because hair loss is progressive. There are too many variables when it comes to hair transplantation that is not marketed by the marketers. So
too many factors to control. It's like herding cats.
Say that again?
Too many factors to control.
Right.
Once you've had your first surgery, too many factors to control to prevent the need for a second surgery or a third surgery. It's like herding cats. And what you're talking about.
Go ahead.
Sorry, caller. I forgot. What's your name, caller? First name?
Hayes.
Hayes. That's right. Yeah. So it's. I mean, this reminds me of this is going to be the subject matter of my next video on my YouTube channel. The last one was for fun, the Matthew McConaughey thing, but my next video is going to be addressing this this very issue of who should not have a hair transplant. And I'm the poster boy for hair transplants. And even today, I had a conversation with someone, and I know Spencer's the same way, but I had a conversation with someone today that's actually going to one of the doctors that I work with, and he called me up and said, I just want to know if I'm doing the right thing. And I said, no, you're not. You're not doing the right thing. You're doing the thing that you want to do. I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you that you shouldn't have surgery, but if you're going to do it, then I feel like he's a safe choice. But ultimately, when you look at who shouldn't have a hair transplant, the very first thing that should be on this list, that's on my list, is if you still live with your parents, do not get a hair transplant.
Yeah.
And start from there, right?
Yeah.
Because
if you can't afford a car, you might not want to have a hair transplant.
Exactly.
It's funny with plastic surgery.
If you have to really dig deep to find the funds for a hair transplant, don't have a hair transplant. If you think a hair transplant is going to transform your life into this parade of unicorns and dandelions, don't get a hair transplant.
If your parents are buying your hair transplant as a birthday gift, don't have a hair transplant.
God, no.
I know so many people who...
You have to bring your parents to a consultation. Don't have a hair transplant.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, wait a second. Dr. Lindsay loves having parents at hair consultations.
That's his thing.
Know that. I know it is. It's his stick.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, he's a responsible surgeon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, I mean, that's...
it's funny, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a good video, Joe.
Yeah, it's almost like... with hair transplantation, it's almost like you should be required to go to a consultation with a guy that's done 3,000 surgeries and has seen it and done it all instead of the, it's just, obviously.
Actually, you should be required to go to a guy who's retired, who's not in the game, who's not a 65-year-old guy, still having to hustle hair. Well,
I didn't mean 65 necessarily. I meant an experienced guy that knows, who's seen every different kind of outcome.
But I'm saying that's a great idea. But he also has to be completely detached. He cannot be a guy who's still hustling hair at his stage in life. I'm talking about a retired. He could be a young guy. He could be a guy in his 50s who just got out of the game.
True.
No longer out there putting out videos about his superior types of PRP and happy patients and all this bullshit.
Well, I mean, at this point, really, really good surgeons that aren't into the complete marketing game aren't, at least Joe would know more about this. Isn't at least 50% of the patients referrals? At least has to be.
I would say no.
I'd agree.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
I would say that referral, like old school referrals, accounts for 5%.